He didn't notice the stares at first. When you're 17 and 1,000 miles from home, you learn to keep your eyes down, to keep your voice soft, to take up as little space as possible. So when Minjun Kim shuffled into the cafeteria, on his third day at Westbrook High, clutching his lunch tray in both hands like it might break if he let go, he told himself that the smirks and sideways glances weren't meant for him. Asterisk. He wished he could believe that. Asterisk. The cafeteria smelled of ketchup and bleach. The tables were packed with clusters of teenagers whose friendships were older than he'd been in America. He scanned for the only face he knew, Mr. Hargrove, his assigned guidance counselor, but saw no sign of the kindly older man who'd told him to just find a place to sit and don't worry. People here are welcoming. Asterisk. Min Chen's stomach clenched. He didn't feel welcome. Asterisk. He picked a corner table near the trash cans, hoping nobody would notice him. As he sat, he tried to steady his breathing. Back home in Seoul, he had friends who would have fought to sit beside him. Here he was just the skinny Korean kid with an accent that made every sentence feel like a test he was bound to fail. Asterisk. The first piece of trash hit his tray when he was opening his thermos. A balled-up napkin, soaked in something sticky, landed right next to his rice. He looked up, confused. A few tables over, a tall boy with a quarterback's shoulders was laughing. Next to him, a girl with shiny blonde hair held up her phone too. Record. Asterisk. Min Chun's face went hot. He swallowed, trying to pretend he didn't see them. Asterisk. Another napkin hit his lap. Then a half-empty juice carton bounced across his tray, splashing orange liquid onto his uniform shirt. Asterisk. Hey, he tried to say, but it came out in a whisper. Asterisk. The blonde girl pointed at him like he was an exhibit. Oh, look at the foreign exchange project. Bet he doesn't even know what's happening. He understood humiliation in any language. The quarterback stood and swaggered over, his sneakers squeaking on the floor. You're supposed to be smart, right? He spoke slowly, as if Minjun were a toddler, a little genius from Korea. Asterisk. Minjun wished he could vanish. He nodded, without meeting the boy's eyes. Asterisk. Then prove it, the boy said, voice hardening. He swept an arm across the trash can behind Minjun. The plastic lid banged against the wall. If you're so smart, you should know how to clean up. Asterisk. Someone snickered. The blonde girl raised her phone higher. Asterisk. Minjun felt the whole cafeteria's attention sink onto him like a weight. Asterisk. He thought of his mother's last words before he boarded the plane. Be brave, my son. Even if you are afraid, be brave. Asterisk. But he wasn't brave. He was tired, and alone, and so ashamed he could hardly breathe. Asterisk. Pick it up, the boy demanded. Asterisk. Minchun's hands trembled. He started to reach for the trash can, thinking he could just pretend it wasn't happening, that it didn't matter if he swallowed his pride. Then the boy laughed again, and something inside Minjun went very still. Asterisk. Eat it, the boy said. Come on, eat it. Show us what you people eat where you come from. Asterisk. There was a pause. A few students gasped, but nobody moved to stop him. Asterisk. Minjun looked up at the quarterback whose smile was all teeth. Then he looked around the room and saw only faces turned away, faces pretending not to see. Asterisk. His hands were ice. He wanted to run, but where would he go? If he ran now, he'd always be the coward, always be less than human to them. The blonde girl shifted closer, phone camera trained on his face. Eat it, the boy barked again. Asterisk. Minchun's heart hammered against his ribs. Slowly he reached into the trash can and lifted out a crumpled sandwich crust. It smelled sour. His stomach turned, but he forced himself to keep his expression blank. Asterisk. This was what they wanted to see him humiliated. Asterisk. He brought the crust halfway to his mouth. A cheer went up from the quarterback's table. Asterisk. And that was when he heard another voice, shaky but loud enough to cut through the noise. Asterisk. Leave him alone. Everyone turned. A girl with dark curls and thick glasses was standing beside the table, her face pale but determined. Minjun recognized her from his English class. Her name was Emily. They'd never spoken, but she always smiled at him when he struggled to read aloud. Asterisk. Are you deaf? She said, voice quivering. I said leave him alone. Asterisk. The quarterback's grin faltered. Mind your business, Four Eyes. Asterisk. Emily squared her shoulders. This is my business. You're bullying him. Asterisk. Minjun couldn't move. He was so stunned he nearly dropped the crust. Asterisk. A few more students were turning to watch. Some pulled out their phones, but this time, they weren't smiling. Asterisk. Emily's voice rose. You think this is funny? Forcing someone to eat garbage? What the hell is wrong with you? A murmur of agreement rippled through the cafeteria. The quarterback's face darkened. He glanced over his shoulder, suddenly unsure. Then, with a disgusted noise, he shoved Minchun's tray to the floor and stalked away. The blonde girl scurried after him. Phone forgotten, silence bloomed in their wake. Minjun stared at the mess on the floor. His hands were still shaking. Asterisk. Emily stepped closer and laid a gentle hand on his shoulder. Are you okay? Asterisk. He couldn't find words in English or Korean. His throat closed. All he could do was nod, tears blurring his vision. Asterisk. She helped him pick up his spilled lunch. Other students began to move. Some came over to apologize for not stopping it sooner. One boy handed Minjun a napkin. Another girl offered to walk him to the office. It was the first time he felt like he wasn't invisible. Mr. Hargrove called Minjun's host parents that afternoon. They were horrified. So was the principal. The quarterback, whose name was Todd, was suspended for a week. But it wasn't the punishment that stayed with Min-Jun. It was Emily's hand on his shoulder. The way she stood up, voice shaking but unflinching. That evening, he sat alone in his room, replaying everything. In Seoul, he'd been popular, confident. Here he felt like he'd been reduced to nothing, until someone reminded him he mattered. The next day, he was afraid to go to school, but when he walked through the cafeteria doors, something had changed. People didn't look away. They met his eyes. A few smiled, tentative but sincere. Emily waved him over to her table. He hesitated, then walked to her. She'd saved a seat beside her. Hi, she said softly. I'm glad you came back. Thank you, he whispered, his voice cracked, for helping me. You shouldn't have needed help, she said, her cheeks flushing. But you're not alone, okay? Something loosened in his chest. They ate together in peace, but the story didn't end there. A few days later, he was called to the principal's office again. A local reporter had heard what happened. She wanted to interview him, but he said no. He didn't want to be the poor foreign kid. Instead, he and Emily started talking to the guidance counselor about organizing an assembly on bullying. Minjun didn't want revenge. He wanted to make sure nobody else felt what he'd felt. It took weeks to prepare. He practiced his speech until his throat was raw. He'd never spoken in front of an audience in English, but he remembered his mother's voice. Be brave, my son. When the day came, the auditorium was packed. Minjun stood at the podium, hands trembling, heart galloping. He took a breath. My name is Minjun Kim, he began, his accent thick but his voice steady. Some of you know what happened to me. Some of you saw it. Some of you didn't do anything. A hush fell over the crowd. When you see someone being hurt, you have a choice, he said, to look away or to stand up. He paused, searching for Emily in the front row. She was watching him, eyes bright. I was humiliated. I was scared, he continued. But I learned something important. Even one voice can change everything, even if you're afraid. A lump rose in his throat. He swallowed it down. I don't want anyone else to feel like trash, he said. We all deserve respect, no matter where we come from. When he stepped back, the applause started slowly, then swelled into a roar. After the assembly, things got better. Not perfect, but better. Todd's friends stopped looking at Minjun like he was less than them. Some even apologized. The blonde girl deleted the video she'd recorded. More importantly, Minjun found friends. Emily, of course, but others too, people who admired his courage, who saw him as more than a target. He started helping tutor other ESL students. He joined the chess club. Bit by bit, he built a place for himself. Sometimes he still felt alone, but he knew now that he had the strength to stand up and that there were people who would stand with him by spring. The story had spread beyond Westbrook High. The local paper ran a feature on the anti-bullying initiative he'd helped start. Messages of support arrived from other schools. One afternoon, as he packed his bag, Emily came over, holding her phone. Your mom, she said with a smile. She sent another email. Minjun took the phone and read the familiar script. I'm so proud of you, my brave son. You are showing the world your true heart. He blinked hard, willing back tears. Thank you, he whispered, though he wasn't sure if he meant it for his mother or for Emily or for every person who had ever reached out a hand. Maybe all of them. On the last day of school, as he walked through the halls, people greeted him by name. He realized he'd stopped dreading coming here. He felt something like belonging. And as he boarded the bus home, he thought about the first day he'd arrived, how he'd believed he had to shrink himself so small nobody would see him. He understood now that you didn't have to disappear to survive. You didn't have to eat your shame to be accepted. You just had to be brave enough to let people know you were human.